devotees have dealt with it in different ways. For example, in the Krishna Sandarbha, I believe, Jiva Goswami speaks about like partial representations. So it's kind of like it's there and it manifests in a more, let's say the demon is there, but manifests in a more concrete form in the Prakat Lila. So kind of a shadow of that. So if you take that perspective, that in other words, it can't manifest in the Prakat Lila if it doesn't have something there in the Aprakat Lila that is its seed, if you will, then you can look, for example, at the descriptions in Brihad Bhagavatamrita that you refer to of, let's say, Krishna dealing with the Keshi demon, who turns into a pony for the cowherd boys to ride on, for fun, or Istasura becomes, a willing puller of the bullock carts and plowing the fields and whatnot. It plays out differently, obviously, in the material world, where the Prakat Lila is manifest, and who knows, who plays those roles, if you will, in different Leelas, takes the role of Arista and fills in that role in the drama, or the role of Keshi, and then gets liberated and so forth, would be different than how that plays out in detail, as I mentioned, but also who's the player. Let's say, for example, look at it from the other side. We're looking at Asuras and look at the Devas. So according to the Tantra, then, for example, Brihad Gautamiya Tantra, all the gods are there in Goloka. Now, they're not like the gods here, Brahma, Shiva, and so forth, who are partial representatives of divinity roles. They're roles, or they are positions that are filled by different jivas who then become liberated and so forth. But the gods are there, and there's some expression of devotion and part of all that is required, in a sense, for the human-like Leela to take place. So I believe that you have to have some of the elements that might bring about fear and anxiety and so on and so forth for it to be human-like, and therefore Sanatana has explained it like that, and I think it corresponds with what Jiva Goswami says in Krishna Sandarbha, without giving an example of how there's a shadow of them. Or Prabhupada used to say that there are rumors of them, the demons. There's rumors. Of course, Brihad Bhagavatamrita has what Krishna goes to Vrindavan, goes to Mathura for a couple of months and comes back, I think 3 months or something like that. It's also dealt with in Laghu Bhagavatamrita of Rupa Goswami there. So I think that the Siddhanta, the conclusion is that all of these kind of, really what we're talking about is feelings are present. And they can be present also. We should understand the bhava of a particular devotee. The bhava of a particular devotee that turns into rasa, that has a shape and a form, has extensions of that also. You could even consider the family an extension of the bhava of the devotee who attains bhakti rasa. And so for individual devotees also, then there may be representations or ways in which the emotional effects of negativity, for example, in the form of demons and so forth arises, plays out, and becomes part of the Leela as he or she participates in it. So I think you can also, for further reference, I think you can also find a similar idea with regard to the different ages of Krishna. So often Krishna is portrayed as Nitya Kishore in the Aprakat Leela. Whereas in the Prakat Leela, he has the Kumar Leela and the Prakat Leela, or excuse me, the Poganda Leela and his Kishore Leela. That means his childhood, his boyhood, and his youth. But while the Kishore form of Krishna includes the excellences of Kumar and Poganda and is the fullest expression, if you will, of beautiful Krishna in one sense, the acharyas have written that all these ages are manifest in different prakashas, different windows or visions of the Leela for different devotees that are happening. I've compared it sometimes if you go to like, to some of the larger airplanes on longer flights have this screen where you've got, all these different movies playing all the time. And you can always click into one or another. So it's something like that. They're all playing themselves out. But different acharyas have written in different ways about it. You can find that explanation, I believe, in Krishna Sandarbha and also in Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur's Brihat Bhagavatamrita Khan, a small book, short book. He explains like that also. In Ananda Vrindavan Champu, I believe, what is his name? Kavi Karnapur posits only the Kishore Leela. And he also pretty much makes the Poganda Leela the same as the Kishore Leela in his work, merging them together. So, so all the ages are there, all the feelings are there in some sense or another. I think that's the Siddhanta. Does that help? Okay. Goloka Vrindavan ki jai. Brihat Bhagavatamrita ki jai.
Okay. And I forgot to tell you that there are a number of questions today.
Okay.
And we have 87 people on the call so far. So,
okay.
Yeah. So Devyapati, unmute yourself.
Hare Krishna. Srila Guru Maharaj, please accept my humble obeisances. I wanted to ask the question about how to ask proper questions.
Because we have a lot of questions, just don't explain the question you're going to ask, just ask the question.
Okay, sorry. For a few times I heard on your lectures about this example, how we are somewhere in shopping mall and it is said, here you are, and there you like to go. So basically, I want to know, because everybody has different questions that he would like to ask, how to choose from those questions which are appropriate questions for ourselves in a particular situation. For example, now I have some questions about spiritual sky, but basically what is relevant for myself, what to ask. So on the other side, there are devotees that I noticed that they don't ever ask any question. Can you advance and never this pariprashnena asking question to like activate in your spiritual life?
Well, Prabhupada said that he only had one question for his guru, and that question was, how can I serve you? So if that's your attitude, then certainly all the questions, all doubts will be eradicated. But questioning is encouraged, of course, and I think you're asking whether your question would be appropriate about the spiritual world or something like that. I mean, the best way to find out is to ask it and find out. But if you're talking about the prayojan, the goal, you cite my example of the shopping mall. You go to the shopping mall, you look at the map, it says you are here and you want to go here, and it shows it's over here. So both things are important, where you are now and where you want to go. And if you concentrate on where you want to go without paying attention to where you are in terms of the steps you have to take to get there, well, you're never going to get there. So both are important. So if we go to Vaishnavism, we can locate ourselves within the developmental stages of bhakti, given by Rupa Goswami, that Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur has written a whole book about, for example, Madhurya Kadambini, from the beginning of Shraddha to faith and Sadhu Sangha association, practice, and so on, Nishta, Ruchi, Asakti, Bhava. So we can locate ourselves there. And with regard to the goal, well, we know that there are two prominent windows of opportunity that have come to us through the dispensation of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's Sankirtan. And that is a particular type of Madhurya Rasa that we see in Rupa Goswami and Sanatana Goswami, Jiva Goswami, and that is the closest thing to what Chaitanya Mahaprabhu himself is pursuing. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is pursuing the bhava of Radha, and through the Radha Dasyam, or sometimes referred to as Manjari Bhava, one can come as close as one could to what Chaitanya Mahaprabhu himself is personally experiencing. And then Nityananda Prabhu, of course, comes as the chief assistant of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, especially with regard to dispensation, widely, and so forth. And he, of course, is Balaram. He's in Sakyarasa. And so we find a current of Sakyarasa also in the Gaudiya Sampradaya. So typically the devotees will find themselves attracted to one or the other, or they may not find themselves in early stages attracted to either of them, but they may be thoughtful and intelligent and study the scriptures and understand perhaps what their own guru's position is, and just attach themselves to that, which is fairly characteristic. And that can kind of solve the prayojan tattva issue of where to go. Due course, practice of hearing and chanting and asking relevant questions, then that will come more into focus. Now there are exceptions. The Gaudiya Sampradaya is very broad and very deep at the same time. So its breadth will be such that some Ram Bhaktas will come also, and Bhaktas of other avatars still left here in the material world waiting to be picked up, so to speak. And the broad campaign of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu will pick them up and facilitate their attaining their ideal. And we find eternal associates from, for example, Ram Leela in the form of Murari Gupta, who was so prominent in Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's Leela, wrote the first biography on Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And he is considered Hanuman in Gaur Leela. So, but those are exceptions. So does that help?
Yes, thank you very much.
Okay, next question.
Yes, and Paramatma Swami reminded me to say how many questions there are. So we have 1, 2, 3, 6 more questions that we have to ask. So just to let you know. Prem Das, unmute yourself.
Go ahead. I just have to plug in my computer. Go ahead, I can hear you.
Time for a station break.
I can hear you. Go ahead.
Okay. Prem Das.
Hare Krishna, Guru Maharaj. Dandavat. Guru Maharaj, in the 8th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, in the verse 10, Krishna tells how to meditate on him. In the description to this verse, I read, in his Paramatma feature, he both manifests the word and enters the heart, every soul. In Bhagavad Gita, chapter 13, in verse 23, Krishna says, the superior Purusha in the body, who witnesses, sanctions, maintains, and protects, is the supreme controller and enjoyer, and is called the Paramatma. So my question is, so is Krishna as Paramatma simultaneously situated in the material body and heart of the soul. Could you comment on that?
Right. Well, Krishna, of course, is Swami Bhagavan. So all manifestations of divinity are found in him. And all the manifestations of divinity outside of himself are partial expressions of all that we find in Krishna. Now, the Paramatma feature of Bhagavan is particularly distinguished from Bhagavan as a feature itself. And I'm contrasting this with, for example, Krishna manifesting as Balaram, or as Dwarkesh Krishna, Matharesh Krishna, and so on and so forth. Paramatma presides over the material world. There are three forms of the Paramatma. As the Mahavishnu, who represents the idea that the whole cosmos is within Bhagavan. Then there's the idea of Garbhodakshay Vishnu, which is that the God is also present in every manifestation of the cosmos and every universal manifestation in a multiverse kind of perspective. And then there's the Garbhodaksha Vishnu, and the Shiradaksha Vishnu represents the idea that God is within the smallest particle of every of the material constituents. So the idea of Vishnu means really all pervading. So he's all pervading. These are three ways of talking about his all pervasiveness. And so you're referring to the idea of the God within the heart, which would be a reference more to the Shiradaksha Vishnu concept, microcosmic, representation of Vishnu in every living being, right? So that's a particular manifestation of Krishna. But the Paramatma's function is different than that of Bhagavan's. So Paramatma is the witness, functioning, presiding over material existence, and Bhagavan is in sport, in Leela, in the Paravyom. So their functions are quite different. I mean, material world is a kind of a Leela. We call it the Shrishti Leela, the Leela of creation, but it's quite different than the Nitya Leela of Krishna. So devotees of Krishna in our Sampradaya, in the Gaudiya Sampradaya, they yearn and long to enter the Leela of Krishna. So their fixation is not on the Paramatma feature, really. Their fixation is on Bhagavan. And to the extent that they are actually preoccupied with Bhagavan, that means Bhagavan's in their heart. We're talking about it in a metaphorical way, not in a physical way. And the same holds true with Paramatma. To say that God is in the heart physically, Paramatma, as the scriptures sometimes say, is just a way of talking about the Paramatma so that one could conceptualize mentally and focus on the Paramatma feature. Really, he's everywhere. He's all pervasive. So God is in the heart in one sense for those who want him to be there. And for those who aren't interested, he's for all intents and purposes not there, even though he's everywhere. And so with regard to Krishna, who's our deity, or Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, then we give our heart and we give ourselves to him. It means that he takes the place of the Paramatma. He becomes the Lord of our heart. This is especially the realization that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu expressed in his Shikshastakam on the stage of Ruchi, where he says, Nadanam najanam nasundarim kabitam va jagadisha kamaye. I don't have any need for anything of the world. Nadanam najanam nasundarim. I don't need an emotional relationship. I don't need money. I don't need followers. Nadanam najanam nasundarim kabitam va jagadisha kamaye. Neither I have any need for the Isha of the world, of the Jagat, of the Paramatma. He says, but Mama Janmani Janmanishvari, Babatat Bhakti Rahoita Kitvai. I only want bhakti life after life. I'm not even concerned with transcending birth and death. I only want bhakti. And Bhavatat Bhakti, it says, Mama Janmi Janmanishware, Bhavatat Bhakti. So he replaces, if you will, the Paramatma who presides over the material world and material desires with Bhagavan, the Pranishwar, the Lord of his heart and life, which is for Chaitanya Mahaprabhu versus Krishna. So am I answering your question? Does that answer your question?
Yeah, thank you so much. Hare Krishna.
So Krishna speaking generally there, to people in general, is the general teaching. The Paramatma is in everyone's heart. It's in every atom. He's in every atom. He's everywhere, and so forth. But then within Gaudiya Vaishnavism, we're looking at that truth and the more of the truth as well that I've brought into the picture. So we should think that Krishna's in our heart. That was Gadadhar told that to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who was searching for Krishna. He said, Krishna's in your heart, don't worry. Then he began to tear apart his chest. So try to become like that. Okay, next question. Nice to see you too.
Okay, Paramatma Swami, you have a couple questions on your end?
See. Right. I wrote about this recently. I think that one way to deal with this question, which is an interesting question, of course, the idea being that well, God transcends all cultures. So there's sometimes some well, at any rate, so in Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's dispensation, as I've said before, is both broad and it's deep. So with regard to the breadth, there's relativity. And that would refer to the Yugavatar feature of Bhagavan, which itself is a relative idea. As Bhaktivinoda Thakur said, time is one of the things in history that are relative. So in the time of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, the devotees lived in a Puranic cosmographic, cosmological perspective. A very extraordinary person appeared amongst them, and they located him on their map, the Puranic map, with Yuga cycles and everything. So he was the Kali Yuga avatar. Now, if you don't live in that Puranic perspective and you live in a modern perspective, well, it would be hard to make a case for its Kali Yuga from the modern historical perspective. And but that doesn't mean you can dismiss Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, the embodiment of ecstasy that he was. Somehow you have to explain him, and somehow, if you have any sense, you have to take They'll really take shelter of him because everyone's seeking happiness. You couldn't find a happier person. As I say, there's no person in the secular world, what to speak of even in the religious world, that that speaks more through example of the life of ecstasy than Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So as much as we're all seeking happiness, in one sense, in bliss, in everything that we do, then this person has to be taken seriously. You can call him whatever you want to call him, but and of course, and he's preoccupied with the mytho-historical Krishna, who we can't entirely locate and verify the details of his life historically, as they're described in the Bhagavad Purana. But the Bhagavad Purana is a description arising out of the meditative consideration of Krishna Lila on the part of Vyas and the implications and so on and so forth. So, so Chaitanya Mahaprabhu makes Krishna and Krishna Lila real, if you will. And he's a historical person, however you want to look at him. But there's two sides to him, the inner side and the outer side. The outer side is broad. He's the Kali Yuga avatar. So along with Kali Yuga, how many other things are relative? And I'm really shocking some of you perhaps, but things are relative about Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and what's essential and what's the deep side. So to take it to a more directly related to your question, perhaps there are questions of what do we have to become Indians to become Krishna conscious? It's kind of like the question. What parts of Indian culture do we have to adopt? Do women have to wear saris? Do men have to wear dhotis? There's a ongoing discussion about that that's out and about and so forth. And I think that the answer to that is that from the broader perspective, what to wear in the present that will make you feel comfortable for practicing Krishna consciousness in the culture that you're in, and from the point of view of attracting others or sharing your dispensation of Mahaprabhu with others, what you might wear, that's a relative consideration. And that falls under the breadth of Gaudiya Vaishnavism. So you can choose whatever you want. And that's generally a question for householders, because for sannyasis, they can go naked. There's no rule for them what they should wear whatsoever. They have no rule what they should wear. That's the truth about what it really means as a sannyasi. And the example is Sukadeva, of course. He didn't wear anything. So for householders, what to wear? Well, you wear what you feel comfortable with. Now, at the same time, certain clothes represent certain things, right? Certain clothes are worn in order to attract people sexually. That's not something that a sadhaka wants to do, to put out sexual, vibes, if you will, or attract, beyond, certain limit. A young lady or young man wants to attract the opposite sex to a point, and then marry and have a family and so forth. Some place for that. You don't make yourself look ugly, but some clothes are obviously, just for attracting the opposite sex and for sex and nothing else. So clothes have meaning and purpose, right? And I think that to use something from Indian culture and philosophy to answer this type of question, I would say wear something sattvic. That is not like promoting bodily consciousness overtly, if that makes you feel comfortable. And if other people of the culture, will be attracted to that. I mean, there's clothes for everything. So if you go jogging, you wear certain clothes for jogging. If you do yoga, there's clothes for yoga. When I was a kid anyway, go to church, you wore your best clothes to church on Sunday. You didn't just wear any old thing. So to have a uniform for church or for sadhana, there's a place for that. And it doesn't have to be for a woman a sari. It doesn't have to be a dhoti for a man necessarily. So with regard to the breath, that's one thing. The breath of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. There's some relativity there. With regard to the depth, then, the depth means it gives us an opportunity to enter into the Leela. And the descriptions of the Leela are they're fairly precise. And they're precise for a reason, because they give us something concrete to visualize meditatively. And the descriptions are very Indian. Krishna's wearing a dhoti. His friends are similarly dressed. And the dress of Krishna is an udipana for bhakti rasa. And so we can't think of the Leela that everybody's naked or something, so to make them not part of any particular culture. The way I look at it is that we live on one planet, it's called Earth, and in one place on the Earth, Krishna appeared and performed his Leelas. We call that India. Why should that be different? It's part of your Earth. You're an Earthling, and if you go to New York, you're going to get New York part of Earth. If you go to Argentina, Buenos Aires, you're going to get Buenos Aires part of Earth. If you go to India, you're going to get India part. And included in that is the whole story of Krishna, the whole Leela of Krishna. The idea came out of there. So it's an important place, and out of the idea, a whole culture, it's coming out of a particular culture in a sense, or manifesting within a particular culture. So we kind of look at that culture as kind of a partial manifestation of that reality that transcends it. Is that, in a sense, and more? Or we can say, well, Krishna appeared in India. He's described in meditative poetic verse by our acharyas. Those are the best descriptions we have of details of the absolute in a form that we can have a relationship with as a friend, as a lover, which you can't find in any other tradition. And those descriptions are empowered. We say that they don't do justice to the experience of bhakti rasa. It's more than that, but they are empowered descriptions that coming from devotees in bhava, expressing their bhava as best they can in poetry, and those should be taken seriously. So that's internal. So internally, I'll think, I want to dress like that. If we meditate on Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's Leela, it's clear how he dressed and how he's dressed. If I want to be a Brahmin boy and serve him in Dasya Rasa in Gaur Leela, I want to put on a white dhoti and fold it in three different places, as he's beautifully described in Chaitanya Bhagavat. Behold the beauty of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu with his dhoti threefold folded and so forth. So the Atma Dhyan given in Dhyan Chandra's work finds the sadhaka meditating on himself in that form, like in a white dhoti, is a Brahmin boy projecting himself into the Leela. So that's internal. Internal. But if you like Indian culture and you like Bengal culture, like I do, then you're going to incorporate more of it. But it's true that just adapting elements of Indian culture, let's give another example. Well, any example, but just by adapting Indian culture, which is a changing thing in itself, but I mean, if you try to look back to the time of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, for example, as a life of a sadhaka, how people were conducting themselves, we take essential things from there, and there may be good things that manifest in our particular culture as well that we can incorporate and so forth. So we have to be a little dynamic about it. You ask me which things are culture, which things are spiritual. Well, that's depends. For some person, it could be to wear a dhoti is spiritual and essential because it serves that devotee very well in terms of his practice, and for another it may not. So it's not like necessarily one size fits all. And so that's kind of it's a big subject, but that's a somewhat of an answer, I guess. I hope it helps. Okay, yeah, Padma Maharshi, you can maybe follow up on that with Dasi if need be.
I think he did simultaneous through the whole thing, so she heard it all. So
The explanation.
that was a very nice answer, incorporating all sides and synthesizing it. That was really good. Maros, you want to unmute yourself and ask your question?
Those Maharaj. I want to ask what is nowadays the best way how to conduct the preaching?
The best way to conduct preaching nowadays.
Yes.
Okay, in any time, in any days, the best way to conduct the preaching is by your example. So Chaitanya, who could be a better preacher than Chaitanya Mahaprabhu? And if you study him, you will see that his main way of teaching was by example. So the more you are practicing what you preach, the more power it will have. And if preaching is successful, it will result in spiritual development in your personal life. So you should preach to purify yourself. This should be your view. I'm going to speak to others about Krishna, and I'm going to listen to what's coming out of my mouth that I'm telling them. And I'm going to think, I'm saying this myself. I should be doing this. Then the preaching will be very, very effective, because as you do it and you put it into practice, then the results come, and people will see this is an attractive ideal. This person is fulfilled, happy, generous. He has all the good qualities, and so on and so forth. So this is essential. Otherwise, we come up with different strategies in different countries and different cultures and different times and different places, and they may be useful to a point. At a certain point, they may no longer be useful as times change, and so on and so forth. I'm not sure which country you're from, what age group you're going to preach to necessarily, if any. So it could be different. But I think that this is a very important principle that's often missed in today's community of Gaudiya Vaishnavism and internationally. There's sometimes an emphasis on preaching, even at the cost of personal development. Some idea that by bringing other people, you're going to be saved without doing the work yourself, something like that. No, you have to do the work yourself. So preach by example. That is my main answer to you. Otherwise, I think that what's important in the world overall for preaching is that we need more theology. That means we need more persons who are actually capable of reasoning about the implications of the scripture in light of the times in which we live, and writing about Gaudiya Vaishnavism in that way, bringing new insight, new light, and so forth. We need more persons who are capable of doing that, and are not shy to express realizations, and devotees who understand the difference between details and principles. We need devotees, leading devotees, to be freed from the past, so to speak, and being cowered down by things that have been said in the past that don't necessarily pertain to the present and even to their immediate progress, but they keep them in place as if they're a law. This is a problem. So there's a problem, what I'm saying, with the community at large for preaching. otherwise, for yourself, you're a young man. I mean, you want to share your thoughts with other people and so forth. You have to start, you have to create a teachable moment. So if people aren't interested, well, you have to really listen and see, are they interested? Are they listening to what I say? Or are they just waiting for me to finish? Because they're not taking it in. So you want to create a teachable moment or look for a teachable moment. You have something valuable. It said in the Bible, don't throw pearls before the swine, before pigs. So wait for a teachable moment, create a teachable moment. People have some interest, they inquire, you answer. And sometimes saying a little less is more. And they're thinking, what else is there? Sometimes if you overload them with so many things, they may not want to see you next week. So it's a broad answer. I hope it helps. Thank you for asking them. And nice to meet you.
Hare Krishna. Thank you.
Okay, we have 2 questions in the chat. Sharada is the first one. Do you want to read that yourself, Guru Maharaj, or do you want?
Oh, let me see.
She's up on the top of the chat. Sort of, not, yeah.
I see Janardan Das, I see Max.
Oh, yeah, she's right above Janardan.
Yeah, that's not coming on my screen.
Okay.
So you want to read that?
Yeah. Hi, Bo, I have a question that can always wait. Okay, but till the end. Okay, it's concerning devotional songs. Can we find out what devotional songs are bona fide and what are purely bhajans, which have not been used in scripture or by the acharyas? The following song was written in my birthday card by my dad, who sings these with his sitar, called Nara Hari Narayan. Purushottam Hitam Akil. She's on, okay. Sharda?
Akila Niranjana Abhigata Abhinashi Madhava Madhusudana Jagapati Jagabandhana Matarapati Murari Rajake Nivashi Purushottam Tam Nara Hari Narayana. Sorry about the pronunciation. It's just an example because you did mention that certain mantras which describe Krishna Lila are a higher level and that should be used more. And I was just wondering if the same about songs. Is it important that we use authorized, so-called authorized songs, or can we still have these songs for smaranam?
Yeah, there are different kinds of songs. Then different types of kirtan. So it would seem that the kirtan that your father was singing is a nam kirtan. It's full of names of God, right? Purushottam.
Yeah.
I forget all of them.
Yeah.
No harm in nam kirtan. At the same time, we will, as Gaudias, we will sing the names that we will choose to sing about are the names that really pertain to describing Krishna in terms of our ideal, or in at least Krishna in Braj. So, for example, we don't typically chant the name Narayan, although it's not a bad thing. But Krishna.
That's right. Yeah.
Yashodanandan, all these names. So in our Gaudiya Sampradaya, and there's a very strong sense that Krishna is not Krishna, or doesn't exist, if you will, without his devotees in Braj. They are all his Swarup Shakti. So they are the love, and he is the loved, and you can't have one without the other. So the names of Krishna often include his relationship with different devotees and so forth. So you can find that kind of a Nam Kirtan, for example, in the writings of Bhakti Vinod, who wrote so many songs. And of course, he's like the founder of our Sampradaya, so there's a place to turn. And also the songs of Narottam Thakur are very prominent in the whole of the Gaudiya Sampradaya. So we tend, most of the songs that you'll see sung in Gaudiya Sampradaya are from probably Narottam Thakur, and in our particular parivar, from Narottam and from Bhaktivinoda Thakur. That doesn't mean there aren't other songs. There are, but if we keep just a simple way our focus on the Braj Leela, there are going to be songs that contain names from there, and then there are going to be songs that describe the Leelas there also, or the Leelas of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So there would be Leela Kirtan. And those are all good. I mean, there are so many, the Gaudiya, Padabali, there's the 3,000 poems, songs there. You should translate it. You're Bengali, half Bengali. So does that help?
Thank you, Maharaj.
Okay.
Dandavat.
Yeah.
Terrible.
Okay, the next question is, Pamanava Swami, there's a question in the chat from Gor Haridas from Brazil. Could you, can you see that? Okay.
Yeah. Well, simply put, the goal of sadhana bhakti is bhava bhakti. And the goal of bhava bhakti is prem bhakti. And prem is the prayojan. So we do bhakti only for bhakti, not for anything else. But bhakti in apprenticeship, so to speak, is sadhana bhakti, which is bhakti, the angas of bhakti performed with the senses. It's not necessarily generated by spiritual emotion. When we go through the motions, if you will, of performing the angas of bhakti with our senses, with our body, in due course, spiritual emotion will arise. That's called bhava. When we enter into bhava bhakti, now we've reached the goal of sadhana bhakti. And now our bhakti is both active with the senses and emotive, external and internal. But now the external activities are all driven by spiritual emotion rather than by good reasoning or just following an example of someone has the emotion that I'm attracted to, and so forth. And then there's a sadhana that continues, if you will, in the stage of bhava bhakti, which is churning the bhava, cultivating the bhava, which is, it's not a hard thing to do. It's a natural thing to do. It's a little harder to go through the motions with your senses without any feeling for it. You get a little feeling, but I mean to have it driven by feelings and other things. So anyway, the bhava bhakti is a churning of the bhava that is a ray, metaphorically speaking, of the sun of prema. And that intensification of the bhava, sthayi bhava, combined with other bhavas, becomes prem. And in a general sense, we say prem is the prayojan. So prem is the prayojan of all stages of bhakti, but you can say, as I mentioned, that the goal of sadhana bhakti is bhava bhakti, and the goal of bhava bhakti is prem. Hope that helps.
Okay. Tadas, you want to ask a question? You have to unmute. Okay.
Hare Krishna Maharaj.
I have a question.
What is it?
Yeah, yeah. So I have heard many times in your lectures and also in Prabhupada lectures about his complaint that Westerns, they like to change everything too much. Then there is a issue with the changed books in I don't know if that is an issue, but it's like some time ago it was like a big thing. Maybe now it is also. So in the light of this, I would like to ask you. So in one of your lectures, you mentioned that actually the mantra that we are chanting, it is changed in the others. Like it was before Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, and then Hare Krishna. And then for some in Upanishads, and then for some reason it was changed for the Hare Krishna and at the beginning. And you say that it doesn't matter because when you chant it, it just becomes the rolling, and it doesn't matter what is the beginning. But the question would be, so why then it was changed? Why it was the need of the change? Why it was not as the same as in Upanishads? And if it is okay to chant, originally, and if there are any difference in chanting, with beginning, like with the result of the mantra, if there is any different
Right.
results. Yeah.
First of all, I think when Prabhupada was frustrated with the need as he proceeded of the Western devotees to change things all the time, it's somewhat of an Eastern orientation where there's a more of an acceptance of impermanence. Eastern thought and worldview is more pervaded by a sense of the inevitable impermanence, which then does not, to the same extent, give impetus for change and improvement and so forth. The West is not as is always wants to improve things. It's very much a Raja Guna kind of a culture. Improve, 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 improve. And a more a sattvic perspective as well. You can only improve it so much. It's impermanent. It's not necessarily lazy, but there's happiness in and contentedness that arises from accepting the fact of impermanence. So anyway, that's just a broad answer of what how he was thinking. But with regard to your question, the mantra, the fact of the matter is there are two versions of the Kali Shantaran Upanishad, and the mantra is, in one version it has Hare Ram, Ram, Hare Hare first, and the other version it says Hare Krishna, 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 Hare Hare first. So I don't think anybody changed anything. Sometimes people say Chaitanya Mahaprabhu took the Kali Shantaran Upanishad Nam mantra of 16 syllables for Kali Yuga that begins with Hare Ram and change it to start with Hare Krishna, because the common people are not said to be able to chant the Vedas, and so he turned it into change it so that everybody could chant. I mean, some people make an argument like that. Whether it's accurate or not is nobody can say. And again, there are two versions of the Upanishad, and the mantra appears one way and one. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu may have been drawing from the one that had the Hare Krishna first. But really, these are just names of God. Now, there is a formula to it. Yes, it's 16 syllables. It is a Nam mantra. But again, if you chant it, the idea is to be absorbed in the chanting so that there is no beginning and there is no end. So there won't be a different result if you start with Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, necessarily. But we follow the way that our sampradayas, is chanted. So the whole Gaudiya Sampradaya, who is the Sampradaya that is promoting the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra worldwide, begins with Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. So there's no need to question whether it works. It works. Would it work chanting Hare Ram? Yes, it would. So hope that helps. Okay, so.
Yeah, so time's up, but thank you. And just a reminder that next Sunday you're giving a class on Gopal Bhatta Goswami for his disappearance day.
Okay.
Yes. So no questions and answers next week. We'll have a class at the same time. So we look forward to everyone joining us.
I should say one other thing, because you asked for news, and something did come in to me this morning. It was very good news that I should report, and that is that the devotees in Poland have completed the translation of my Bhagavad Gita, and they're going to be publishing that shortly, with the hopes that it'll be a popular edition of the text in Poland. So far, they've done Aesthetic Vedanta, I think Shikshastakam, Gopal Tapani, Bhagavad Gita. So there's a competition between
competition, good.
Between Europe and Latin America. Americans have come out with a couple of 3 books now recently. So I was happy to hear that. It's very, very heartening. So I want to share it with all of you.
That's very good news. That's wonderful. Hare Krishna. And somebody asked about the link for next Sunday, same link as today. So.
Okay.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Gumaraj. Wonderful, wonderful answers. And I hope you feel better. Oh, he's gone. So hope he feels better. I hope everybody feels better and stays well as we can in the world we live in today. Yeah, sure. Oh, Nanda. Oh, yeah. I actually sent you a couple emails explaining what happened. Okay. All right. Okay. No, it's my fault. It was my fault. Okay. All right. Bye. Well, good to see everybody. Haribol.
Haribol. Haribol.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Haribol.